Hello, my name is Spencer and welcome back to my hobby channel. I enjoy making little dioramas to escape reality for a bit. This project was a bit of a breath of fresh air for me, as it is the first diorama I've made in a couple projects. These models were gifted to me by my brother-in-law last Christmas, and I've been really excited to get into them and kind of create this mythical, historical fantasy type world. For the base of the diorama, it's pretty straightforward, just cutting up some XPS foam, putting them on a bit of canvas that I found at my local Joann's as it was going out of business, and then creating some terrain on the top of it. While this setting for this project is explicitly fictional and not related to any real-life accuracy, I do know that they are English knights from the 100 Years' War, so I will be using some English naming theming, but still trying to tie it into a fantasy setting. For the overall abstract of this project, these three soldiers are on their way on a sort of pilgrimage to an island nation far away from their home. As they were navigating the rugged terrain, they were walking through a riverbed, and unbeknownst to them, there is a creature that lies awaiting for prey to take these easier paths. Overall, the techniques I'm using on this project aren't too technically complicated, nor I didn't create any of these things from scratch. I just am following other tutorials I've seen online. But if anyone has a question of how I did something or why I chose to do something, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'm pretty good with responding to them in semi-fast fashion, but I really like just sharing my creative process and how I go about making these types of projects. I definitely don't consider myself a professional by any means. I'm still pretty new to the hobby. I'm not a great terrain maker. I'm not a great miniature painter, but it's more about having fun and kind of sharing the process and just kind of like putting myself out there. This project really helped me recalibrate what I really enjoy about this hobby. It's more about having fun, this project, than perfection, especially because my life has been kind of very overwhelming time commitment-wise in everything other than hobby. This project provided me a good escape just to like enter my imagination and zone out for a little bit every day. For the setting of this diorama, I would say that we are in Romont, a dry area in between the two kingdoms, where the riverbeds dry out pretty frequently, but there is ample vegetation around for flora and fauna to flourish. But I would say this is a rather desolate area of Romont, and the nearest civilization might be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days trek away. While I paint these guys up, I'll tell you a little bit about their backstories. These three intrepid knights come from the smallish to medium-sized Regaby kingdom. They were tasked by their king to be a diplomatic envoy to the much larger Kingdom of Comino, near half the continent away, and they are currently passing through the lands of Romont. These three are fairly respected knights, however, unfortunately, they don't have much experience in foreign lands and dealing with foreign fauna. Their names are Sir Monx, Alden, and Alsak. I did decide to paint them up in the traditional English box art style, but that was more for practice and just me trying to refine my miniature painting skills, as I haven't made a diorama in quite some time, especially not making any custom color palettes. I like to think that they've all been on their feet all day and we're approaching the brink of exhaustion and kind of looking for a place to rest for the night. But unfortunately, the villain of this piece jumps out at them right as they were about to settle down. For this project, I really wanted to focus on the having fun aspect of this hobby and care a little less about the editing, the amount of time, the perfect details, all those things that I end up overthinking so much that just makes the projects take forever. Whenever I made a mistake, I would just either call a mulligan, repaint it, try again, and I think I was pretty happy with myself of just not beating myself up too much when I made tiny or even large errors. But also, I would consider myself an intermediate painter at this point, so I just kind of forced myself to make mistakes, have fun, learn, try again, strip the paint, reapply the paint, and just try not to get too frustrated with the process, because I still need to learn the process. For the villain of this piece, I was incredibly excited to try to sculpt something out of the clay, kind of north of the border style. The only thing I've ever sculpted debatably successfully is a brick wall that was a flat piece of clay with a texture roller, so I figured the next step up would be a snake. Pretty much just a long noodle with some fangs, But also one of my challenges for myself in this diorama was trying to tie in the, fauna to the rest of the flora around the diorama. So in my mind, this is a snake that lies as an ambush predator in riverbeds, and its skin and scales kind of look close to the rocks that it surrounds itself with. So, for this villain, I'm going to call it an Argo Viper, or as the locals call it, a jumping rock. Effectively, it closes its eyes, sits in a riverbed or along the side of a riverbed, and blends in with the rock faces. And as prey moves into the waterbed to either look for water or just to navigate more easily, it opens its eyes and jumps out. And its eyes I wanted to make especially scary to, paralyze your fear out of surprise. I will say, just based off the scale of this snake, I'm going to call it a juvenile as well. I was kind of hoping for it to be, 1.5 to 2 times bigger, like enough to swallow a man with ease. But just based off the size of the base that I had, I ultimately decided to make him a little smaller, still a much more valid threat, but 3 knights might be able to take on a juvenile, whereas a fully grown Argo Viper might need a whole clan to take it down. Or hunting party, more accurately. But for this snake, I really didn't want to overcomplicate it. For my previous projects, I've kind of realized that I've been shooting for the stars and then getting frustrated when it's not perfect on the first go. So I figured, a snake, it's kind of a noodle with teeth. There's not a lot to overthink here, and I was really happy with how I set my expectations better than my last projects. When it came to trying to camouflage the snake or trying to make it look kind of blended in with the rest of the diorama, this is where I kind of had a novelty idea, in my opinion, where I just paint the snake in the same way that I painted the rocks, and hopefully near the end of it, it would look rather similar, especially if the details were a little rough, given the fact that with the rocks, it's just random cuts with the hot foam, so this would just be random scrapes with my paintbrush. I've made a fair few dioramas at this point, but it's always nice to kind of feel like I'm improving with my skills. Although this diorama base is pretty simple, it was pretty fast to make, and I was pretty happy with the end result. So I feel like I'm improving, which is always a great feeling. Finally, we can then put everyone into place and affix them permanently. And then once I put on some wooden veneer to the sides and painted it black, we can move to some glamour shots. I'd like to take this moment to say thank you to everyone who stayed through to the end of the video. I really enjoy sharing these dioramas. I really enjoy the storytelling, the creating, the feeling of improving my artistic skills and my editing and my storytelling. I'll see you around in the next one. I appreciate you all. Hope you have an excellent week. See ya.